Welcome to the Mental Health Takeaways, the men's mental health podcast where we try to make conversations about male mental health more engaging so that more men will engage in those conversations. Today's guest is Jase, and Jase says this about pasties.
I once had this waft, I was in B&Q, I had this waft of pasty, and I was like, oh God, oh my God. Turned out to be this big stinky man, and it was chronic BO. I was like, oh God. And that has actually scarred me for life. The two smells are actually the same. They're the same.
Then we come on to the serious subject of the suicide of a friend of his, and Jase shares this with us.
Sadly, a good school friend of mine, took his own life last year. And I remember specifically thinking, if he had told any one of these people, if he'd have gone to them and just poured his heart out to any one of those people, they would have said, come on, mate, let's make this better for you.
And then in the later part of this episode, we talk about this. The conversations that are being provided for men at the moment aren't doing the job. So we need to free up the language around mental health and say, it's okay. If you don't know what the right language is for this term, you're not going to offend us. Let's just talk about it so that we can actually start to help you as well. It's a great show. We really hope you engage with it. Here it comes.
Jase, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and just to share some of the information about your journey and things that you've learned along the way. And obviously for the listeners, kind of part of the backdrop to this is the fact that, quite a long time ago now, you went through quite a challenging divorce, I think it's fair to say. A difficult time for you and everybody concerned. But that's one of the things that's really affects a lot of men. And, I'm sure you're going to share some really inspirational and wise words again with us. Maybe not inspirational. Don't want to big you up too much, but some wise words with us. So you already know the format a little bit. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the show, Matt. Let's get going.
Let's go with a Monday night, because we're recording this on a Monday evening, despite the fact it's going to be released on a Sunday morning. On a Monday night, you get the option of having a takeaway. How does that come about, and what are you likely to order?
Do you know what? When you mentioned takeaways, and as a man, I felt like I should be holding like a big leg of ham or something like that. I was tearing chunks out of it whilst discussing this. But yeah, you can't get them as a takeaway. But I think what I'll go for, it's going to have to be a curry. In fact, it always is a curry. Abby and myself, whenever it comes to takeaway night, there's lazy nights where you just get home and say, oh God, now I've got to cook. You forget that you've actually got to eat in the evening. It's pouring down rain, don't want to go anywhere. It's still a curry. Actually, thinking about it, it's quite interesting. Our selection of curries, here's what we do. Every time we go to select a curry, we treat it as if it's curry roulette. So we literally think, oh yeah, we're going to choose anything. We're going to go off piste. We're not going to have anything we've ever had before. So what we'll do is we'll firstly read through the entire menu to get. This is a very coupley thing. It's an experience. We read through the entire menu together, and then we settle on exactly what we've had before. This happens every time. Every time we're none the wiser. We just go through that off-piste curry experience together. It's so romantic. But we, same thing every time.
Do you know what I already find fascinating there, Jase? Is that you've gone through three things already. You've gone from what you feel like you should have, i.e. a leg of ham, to the curry roulette, to the as a couple, which is a really lovely process to go through of sharing ideas. Back to Old Faithful, we know this works. We'll stick with that.
Well, there's a fourth thing, because I automatically gravitate towards the vegan options. From a vegan.
Vegans tend to gravitate towards those vegan options, I find.
Brad will know me as a vegan that secretly eats meat. I'm one of those.
They're the only genuine ones, I think.
I'm one of those. I'll firstly announce that I need to see the vegan curry menu. So straight for that. I realise that they all sound pretty disgusting, so then I convince myself that I need something pretty meaty. So
I like the
it's-
idea that it just every time without fail you still go through the roulette thing. Like, yeah, no, we'll definitely do it this time.
Yeah, love it, man. It's a ritual. It's our ritual. I just recall Friday evenings, end of the week, both knackered, no food in the cupboards, and just like, yeah, just read through the menu together.
Listen,
Yeah,
I'm just going to mention something that I'm certain we'll probably edit out when it comes to the final edit. And this is a podcast for men, and we label it as containing explicit information. Is this, and this isn't the case for me currently, but does this remind anybody of sexual relationships of the past? Of like, let's try this, try that. We know what works. Let's go for that, shall we?
Yeah, vanilla. It's vanilla.
Hey, I'm not. It doesn't have to be vanilla. It could be you could be going for the I don't know, Vindaloo. That's your choice. I think people tend to gravitate back to Old Faithful, and we know this works. We'll go with that.
100%. 100%. Yeah, we go for the same thing. Chicken zafrani, anacoli chicken, has loads of chicken in it, obviously. Been vegan. What's the other one? Oh, lamb biryani, firm favourite. So I obviously phoned through. It's my job. I phone through. Abby decides. She decides that this is what we're definitely going for. I agree. So I've just learned that's the best thing to do. It's not that really.
It's like all of this takeaway chat is coming back to relationships. You know, Nibbo's just explored the sexual part, and you know, here we are. She makes the decisions. I got to go do it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's just brilliant. Yeah, you end up. I guess like we just end up doing what we're told. So I'll phone through. I'll ask for the vegan keema naan. Do you remember keema naan, the one that's advertised as being like a meat naan bread?
Yeah,
but no one knows the sort of meat that's in it. It's just a meat naan bread. Was it a vegan version of that? So I'll just go. I can just go for the real thing. Could be any sort of meat. A bit of roadkill in there, whatever. Just So all the way, yeah. Just sort of just go the whole hog. End up with the meat sweats. We're not done, but it's all part of the Friday ritual, guys.
Jase, can I ask? This isn't coming from a mental health perspective, but can I just ask? Do you go any other sides that you go for, like a samosa or anything like that? Because
Sorry,
the reason I ask is I'm wondering if you're taking like what I call the tire slash approach of if you were driving somewhere and you get a puncture in one of your 4 tires, you'd pull over and your journey is going to be slowed down and interrupted, but it's going to be able to carry on. I think, and what you would do is repair that tire and then carry on with your journey. But I think sometimes people hit an inevitable hiccup and then decide to metaphorically slash the other 3 tires anyway. So I'm wondering if you're thinking, look, I've gone meat, vegetable samosas are delicious, but fuck it, I'm all in on the meat now. I want a meat samosa. Do you go with that?
Oh, wow. I mean, Brad knows me very well. Actually, Matt, you know me pretty well by now. The thing I love about being a vegan is tell everyone, but when it comes to it, I just love meat.
The worst vegan ever.
Mate, I've got no intention of giving up meat.
I'm already thinking there must be by now. There must be like I don't think it would get like labelled as sort of vegan month, but there'd be like a no meat month, and trying to encourage people for that. I don't know what you're thinking, Nibbo, but I think we get Jase back for that. That when that month comes around, we get Jase on as our vegan specialist.
Well, the least vegan person ever.
Oh, I'm the worst vegan. I love the menus. I love but it's just it just, look at a vegan curry. What's going on? Just get some meat in there. I don't care where it comes from. But yeah, ethics all there, obviously. So it's the thought that counts.
Just talk us through. So you say usually you and Abby, that's your partner, I presume?
Yeah, it is.
Kids?
Yeah. So we've got, we're from 2 previous marriages. Abby's got 2 children with her previous, and same with myself as well. So, we've got 4 kids between us.
Would you have a takeaway when you've got all 4 kids in together, or would you just have it as like a couples thing?
We would have a takeaway with all 4 actually. Although I think because of the strength of our ritual, Matt, we end up just it's just a couples thing. No, we do. It tends to be quite a treat. We'll just get a curry in, and it's quite a nice thing. Yeah, I know I joke about it, but actually, we do enjoy getting a good takeout. Actually,
of course, it's a treat. It's lovely to have a
bit
treat.
More of a couple. Yeah, mate, definitely. Yeah, you've got to do these things.
Good job. Right.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to metaphorically dial in that virtual takeaway, and in the time it takes for it to be delivered, we'll have another conversation about other questions and subjects just to see where the conversation goes in the time that takeaway takes to be delivered. Yeah, just that we're getting for the vegan, the chicken, the lamb, the keema naan, and any other meat they can find. Just if there's a hedgehog on the side of the road, bring that.
That's it. I tend to ask if they've got the vegan option of the lamb biryani, knowing full well that they'll just say biryani. I'll say, I want the vegan option of the lamb biryani. And anyway, they'll get the meat in there, and I'll handle it this time. It's all right. They actually know my order pretty well by now, so they're just like...
You'll handle it this time, you brave little soldier.
That's it. You can just see the chef, can't you?
Tolerate it.
The vegan's in. Get the extra meat.
Pass me that vegan lamb you've got there.
I tend to wear my plant-powered T-shirt when I go down to collect the things. Just let them know.
Nice.
Right, well, takeaway is ordered.
And I think, the listeners have already learned an awful lot about you, Jase, and your relationship. But we're going to delve a bit deeper anyway. And, the format of the show is that we just dive straight into it with really, really, dark, depressing would you rathers, really bring the mood down. Okay. So I want you to think really carefully before you answer this. All right. Jase, the question is, would you rather always smell of BO or always smell BO on everyone else?
Ooh.
Oh, man. Right. Oh, God, Brad. Right, okay. It's going to be... Right, okay. Here we go, bro. There's a bit of background to this. Brad, I've always got a fairly long-winded explanation of things, but I feel like I need to give this explanation up. Have you ever smelt something that you thought was one thing that turns out to be another thing? Have you ever just been like, or something? Yeah, well, yeah, Matt, I know you're intrigued. Well, being a Cornish man and being pretty much brought up on pasties, it was quite an unfortunate experience. I once had this waft. I was in big. I had a waft of pasty. I was like, oh God, oh my God. When you sort of start impulsively like sniffing the air around you like a dog. Turned out to be this big stinky man, and it was chronic BO. I was like, oh God, and that has actually scarred me for life. The two smells are actually the same. The same. They're the same. Next time you go down Rose or wherever you go, Philps, fancy grabby pasty shops, go down Anne's pasties. Oh mate, they are the same. It's the same smell. Pasty and BO. Sorry for all the pasty lovers out there, but that's it. So what I could probably say, I can't really smell it from other people, but if it was on myself, I could think, well, it's just the same as me just having eaten a massive, great dirty steak pasty, nice and peppery. Other people are just going to put up with it. But they may think that I've just scoffed pasties and it's not actual BO. They may not think I was that unhygienic after all.
They might just think you wander around with a pasty under each arm, taking it on.
Totally.
True Cornishman. I think. I think I'm a little bit. Is this the first time actually I've been concerned for a guest? Because I think when this goes out, you're going to have the vegans are going to be after you. The Cornish tourist board are going to be coming for you. Not to mention the countless pasty shop owners that live in this beautiful county that we live in.
That's it, mate. I know I'm a marked man.
He's a renegade.
Yeah, I'm just
He is.
on the run.
This is having the reverse effect for me. And I'm hearing you talk about the smell of pasties and it being a bit like a fat man's BO. And me thinking, I could go a pasty. Like, right now I'm thinking, steak pasty? I could really get into that now. So maybe worry about me as well, Brad.
There we go.
They really need to start. They could actually start putting like pasty adverts on telly with like some fat guy with his arms up in the air, just whipping his pits everywhere. Like, just make that link. Just put it out there.
There we go. So so that's what you're going with. You're going to smell, and everyone else is just going to have to put up with it.
100%. Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Abby's going to be thrilled when she hears this also. So
she'll
cool.
love it. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Good. Right. Well, we're gonna change the pace a little bit. So I'm going to come at you now. Again, this is just to explore kind of some of your experiences, some of the things you learned. We don't need to go into the depths of what went on, and obviously it's entirely up to you what you choose to share. But the purpose of our Would You Rathers is actually, you can think about your experiences and kind of talk to them and share what you want with us, essentially. So we're going to start off with our negative emotions so that we can come back up at the end. So my question for you next is, would you rather feel bitterness or loneliness?
Ooh, this is tricky, isn't it? Right, bitterness or loneliness. I think loneliness is better because it's something you can be responsible for, and you don't necessarily need other people in your life to alleviate loneliness. I think it's more of an internal feeling. I think you can be on your own in solitude without being lonely. Whereas bitterness is always towards other people, and I think that's going to be a really negative emotion, because you're not only going to carry that, you're not only going to project that towards other people around you. You're not going to be a nice person to be around if you're sort of portraying bitterness towards people. It's not going to help forge relationships and anything like that. So loneliness is something you can deal with internally by, and I think, to be fair, I think it does take quite a lot of work to deal with that. It's about processing that emotion inside yourself. But at least you don't drag other people down with you with that emotion. Whereas if you've got bitterness, then it's your view of being bitter towards something or someone around you. I think that's, without trying to sound too hippie, it's a bit like bad karma. That's going to come back and bite you on the backside at some point.
Jase, I love that. And one of the themes that I'm starting to notice, which might be specific to male mental health, is so many men, myself included when I did the pilot for this, talk about what we can sort out ourselves without help from outside. Like that whole, it's in the 12 Steps program as well, about recovering alcoholics, that whole idea of, are you going to unfuck yourself? And the reality is probably a lot of people can't unfuck themselves or unmess up their own world. But I think I'm starting to notice a pattern with men when they're faced with these negative feelings and emotions, picking the one that they feel like they can deal with on their own the best. and maybe that's a male mental health trait. Maybe it's not. We're here sort of in the process of learning. But I just wondered what you thought about that, and Brad, what you thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point, actually, Matt. I think now that we've recorded quite a few of these, that is a tendency that men are like, yeah, I would go with this one because I can action stuff, and I think probably that is part of our makeup. And I guess generically speaking, the male brain, Jase is going to have the vegans and the Cornish people coming. I'm going to have the women coming after me for all the wrong reasons. But generally,
First time for everything.
I'll put this on the person who I did some training with a long time ago back in schools. But he kind of shared that actually the male brain is quite a logical brain, and it's, if you kind of imagine it as boxes. So there is a box for family, there is a box for work. The amazing thing is that there is a nothing box, a place where like we can go to where actually we just don't have to think about anything. And I always remember conversations in the past where my ex-partner would be like, what are you thinking about? I'm like, I'm not thinking about anything. She's like, well, how can you not be thinking about anything? And then I was like, the nothing box. I've got one of those.
It's a good place to be, isn't it?
That's it. But I wonder if that comes into it, that actually our brains are wired to kind of be quite as logical as possible. So if we're faced with these two negative emotions, we kind of think, right, well, I can deal with this one quite logically, and I can process it, and I can take this action. So I'm going to go down that road and leave that one behind, potentially.
Jase, before you come in with your take on that, I'm just going to jump in and say I really don't think it's an issue to identify differences in male and female psychology, or in terms of generalizations, because there clearly is a difference. Because the types of mental ill health experienced by men and women, although there's obviously some crossover, there's also a lot of difference. And actually, if we're too afraid to talk about the fact that there is difference, like the male suicide rate as a glaring example, really sadly, women have in the past few years been starting to catch men up, but there's still some way behind. And of course, actually the stats have changed, and it's still way more prevalent in men. But there are differences in male and female psychology, and we can't be too scared to address that if we want to get towards solutions. So I think you can go back to your normal state, Brad, of having no women after you.
It's fine. I like it.
I think that is an interesting point you say that, actually, Matt, because I mean, you guys, of the three of us, you guys are far more knowledgeable than I am, based on your professions and what you do, and your training as well. And I class myself here as being more the lay person, but from my point of view, it does seem like there is that barrier, that sort of PC barrier. People are too afraid to talk in a matter-of-fact way about these things nowadays, which adds to the difficulty of men trying to discuss mental health, and actually women trying to discuss mental health as well, because we're too afraid to admit that people think in different ways because of who we were born being. And it does create a barrier, doesn't it? But yeah, I'm all for just saying a spade and go for about.
And really quickly, do you know who it creates a barrier with? The people that are actually good-hearted, the people that actually don't want to offend. It's those people that think, I don't want to offend, so I won't say anything, so I'll stay out of this conversation. And they're the people that need to be in the conversation.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, but don't worry, Jase, there's an incredible male mental health podcast that is going to change all of that nationwide, starting really soon. Oh,
I've heard it's called the Mental Health Takeaways.
That's exactly what it's called, Jase.
That's it. That's it.
On brand.
I'm going to correct Nibbo though, because it's actually international. But oh
yeah, we've got a listener in Wales.
One in Wales. Something that sort of jumped out at me, Jase, when you were talking, which I think is a kind of a little insight into your character. And you talked about that you can be on your own but not lonely, and the difference around that. Bitterness is something that you would potentially carry with you that might impact change. And therefore, I just, I know you. But the two things that I really got from that is actually there's a thought of you thinking about others and putting others first there, in the sense of actually, I could be lonely and I could manage this, but at least I'm not taking anybody else down with me with that potentially bitterness could. But also my other thought from that was like about the future, about thinking down the line. Like actually, yeah, I could kind of process loneliness. I could do something about it. I could figure out how I was going to get it. And then I would be able to move forward from that. Whereas I don't think you can move forward from bitterness in the same way, because it's something like you'd carry it around with you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and I think that does clarify what I was thinking. That decision, loneliness is something. I think, listening to what you said there, that's clarified a bit more for me. The fact that out of those two emotions, one's a bit more of an external emotion and one's internal, and you can control internal things. It's a bit like that, typical. I don't know. I guess everyone thinks in different ways. I think in a bit more of a stoic way of looking at the things that you can control, letting go of the things that you can't. And of those two emotions, I guess you could control bitterness. You're responsible for the way that you handle your emotions. Ultimately, both of those emotions would be something that you would wish to change. If someone flipped the coin and said, right, today you're experiencing bitterness, you would wish to change that, and you would also wish to change loneliness. But I think, yeah, they're both ones that you'd wish to change, but one would have an impact on other people and the other wouldn't necessarily. So you're choosing the lesser of the two evils, I guess, aren't you?
It's interesting because I wonder if that's a male thing as well. We kind of, within society, the male is seen as, in traditional mindsets, the provider, the protector. And has that led to this idea of actually, no, we'll internalize this stuff and try and deal with that and take on some of the stuff in order to not let others kind of feel some of that burden. And I can certainly think of times where I've done that.
Yeah,
and
same.
it's, yeah. And it's that whole, like, actually, we think we're doing the right thing. I don't, my personal experience, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting people from it. But what I didn't realize is by taking it all on myself, my mental health kind of dropped to the point where actually, although I thought I was protecting, I wasn't really, because I wasn't kind of looking after myself, and therefore I couldn't look after those around me. So I wonder if that's kind of part of the societal issue around men talking about mental health. We do internalize it, and yet if we can talk, if we can sort of have these light-hearted conversations and chat to friends, and we might not feel the need to try and kind of go through it all on our own, and take on the burden for everybody.
Absolutely. It's basically what you said. You can see that in every case where a male or a man has got to the stage where they've got to that desperation, dark time in their life. You can see in every stage. Sadly, a good school friend of mine took his own life last year, yeah, I remember sitting. Well, basically, what he did is he bottled everything up. He took everything on his own shoulders. Lots of different life issues. So probably going into them, but he took. When I found out about it all afterwards, I was like, "How come we didn't know about this? How come we didn't know?" And he took this and that and this and that. It was ridiculous, and he didn't tell anyone. And I remember sitting in the funeral, looking at he was a very popular lad, and there was many people in front of me in the seating area. And I remember specifically thinking, if he had told any one of these people, if he'd have gone to them and just poured his heart out to any one of those people, they would, and these people are in bits, by the way, they would have said, "Come on, mate, let's make this better for you. We'll be able to solve all your problems. but we'll do something to make today better than yesterday. And and it was, that really hit me hard. I thought, if only you'd have said one of those things, like, I'm really struggling with this or that, where it might have been, look, I'm really struggling with this and that and that and that and that. And they would have preferred that option than seeing, him at the funeral. I know it's very deep, but
no,
that was a
it's what we're here for, Jase. It's what we're here for, because I'm going to have a bit of a rant here. But the problem of male mental health is too important to still not have proper solutions in place for it. And where Brad and I are coming from, quite forcefully, but with a smile on our face, is that men aren't engaging in the types of conversation that men are being told we should engage in. So maybe we either change men, which isn't an option, you can't do it, or we change the types of conversations that men are being told they need to engage in. And conversations, as we said right at the top of the show, conversations that start with, tell me about your mental health. I bet if you'd have said that to your mate, he would have said, I'm fine. Because that clams a guy up. Whereas if you just have conversations that start about things that are easy to talk about, like takeaways, which we know is a silly thing, but obviously each conversation leads to the next one. And then that silly idea of would you rathers. We haven't delved into your mental health, but you've started to tell us about what you think and feel about the difference between bitterness and loneliness, which is you telling us your experience of your thoughts and your feelings. And if we had more time, we'd go into tell us about when you felt bitterness, tell us about when you felt loneliness, and like kind of pull the answers out of that. So I really think the conversations that are being provided for men at the moment aren't doing the job. So that's the other thing, that men tend to gravitate away from, and we've covered this already, tend to gravitate away from conversations where they feel like they might cause offence, they might be a burden. So we need to free up the language around mental health and say, it's okay. If you don't know what the right language is for this term, you're not going to offend us. Let's just talk about it so that we can actually, you're a good guy. We want to help you. If you talk about it, then we can start to help you as well. Don't worry about offending people, because offending people is less serious than your friend taking all the weight of the world on both of his shoulders and then ultimately not being able to find a way out of that. So that's kind of the reason that the podcast is here. So it's not too deep at all. However, I can lighten the mood, and the whole purpose of this podcast is that it's not too heavy, because we think men will disengage from it if it is too heavy. So one of my observations about you, Jase, and I think you're fascinating, is you were talking about how bitterness and loneliness, that you'd rather take the loneliness because it's less of a burden on other people, which is in direct contrast to you rather smelling of BO than other people smelling of BO, because you'd rather be a burden on them. So isn't that funny that when it's something light-hearted and maybe physical, maybe that's the difference, you're rather like, they can have the burden of smelling my stank, that's all right. But when it's a mental health thing, you're more like, well, I'll have the burden and I'll deal with it. Right, I guess
it's probably quite typical, isn't it? It's quite typical of, we as men will put on a front to mask the emotions, won't we? And then when you find a way into talking about it, like you guys did, you asked me those very well thought out questions. Would I prefer this emotion or that emotion? That's when the truth of it comes out, isn't it? And just going back to what you're saying about finding a way to talk about it, I like yourselves, both of you guys, experienced teachers, and I was a teacher as well, and I honestly think, looking at the language that we use, I think, stripping it back into its very basic form, I think men need a way to talk about it. I think we need to be shown how to talk about it. And I don't mean this in any patronizing way at all, in terms of how simple and fundamental this is. But I think to be able to open a conversation with a friend, I honestly think if you ask most men, how would you start to approach your friends to talk about some mental health difficulties that you might be having? How would you open that conversation with your friends? And I honestly think there'd be a vast majority that would have to take a moment or so to think about that. It wouldn't come natural to men. And I also think that men experience the same, not the same emotions as such, but we experience the same quantity of emotions as females do. We're emotional beings as well. But the thing is once we start to open up, it was like a shell, isn't it? Once that shell starts to open, it doesn't open all the way. It opens a little bit, and if there is any threat whatsoever, bang, it's shut and it's not opening then. So if anyone doesn't treat that person with the respect and dignity they deserve when they're coming out with those emotions, if that closes, that's it. That guy is not going to be talking to anyone about it anytime soon. And I think in contrast, women talk about emotions, quite freely, and they express them very well. And I only wish that men could be capable of doing the same. It's a really good quality to have, but they will clam up and they will not talk to anyone about it. That's my perception of it.
I think there's so many good points there, and to have gone a bit deeper into that, I think it's certainly no bad thing. And I think in terms of just going back to you talking about your friend, I think that's a really powerful thing to say on here. And I actually, I had the hairs on my arms were standing up when you were talking about it, because what an amazing thing it is. Because if one person listening to this podcast either thinks, I'm going to go and check in on them, and I'm going to think about the language that I use, I'm going to think about how I approach it, then that could have hugely positive consequences. Likewise, if one person thinks, God, that's me, I need to go and talk to somebody, then it's massive. So yeah, I totally unapologetically, great to say that. Thank you for sharing that. Nibbo, I thought you picked up on a point. I'd often like to tell everyone that you're an absolute waste of time on this show, but you were very astute there. So credit where credit's due. I think the other thing that kind of stuck out on me, it really important what you said about the threats. And I think if somebody does opening up, and I saw a really interesting video just on social media the other day. It was a man talking about trying to talk about their emotions. And he was sort of saying, no, we do talk about our emotions. But if you take that thing that we've told you, that where we've exposed ourselves to being vulnerable, and the word he used was weaponize it. You come back at us in an argument with something that's been said, then we'll never talk again. And that's kind of like what you're talking about. It's so important. And I think, so again, it's a massive learning curve that we can take away, because actually men, we do like to approach things through humor in the way that we're doing this show. We do like to use banter and have a kind of light-hearted approach, but we do need to take that information and be really mindful of it. But like you say, that all of those people at that funeral would probably give anything to be able to have that person come and speak to them. And I think the other thing, it's my final point just from listening to you talk, was I think it's when men get similarities, I think that helps the conversation happen. And I can think about, in fact, all three of us. So, we have all been through a process of separation. And that commonality meant that we spoke more. So when I was going through it, I spoke to Nibbo lots. I spoke to you loads, Jase, and you're like one of those mythical creatures that we all know and love you, and we know that you're there, but you're always really busy, and But we spoke loads there, so I think we do need to think about the sorts of language that we use in order to have the conversations. But the similarities are important, and once it's out, it's easy to talk to Jase because I know he's been through it. And if we applied that same approach to talking about other stuff that affects our mental health, we would recognise that, Jase has been through that as well. And actually Nibbo's experienced that as well. All of a sudden that conversation's easier to have, isn't it? But we're only going to get that if we start to talk more, aren't we? So I think it's really, really valuable what you said there, Jason. Massively important.
Can I jump in? I don't want to cut you off, Jase, but there's two things. Hopefully, the speed that Brad and I work on this will mean that hopefully enough time has passed since what I'm about to tell you about and the actual release of this show. But a friend of mine, a female friend of mine, was on a group chat with me and another woman, telling us about how she was feeling really sad and really angry and really cross that her boyfriend had told her that he was feeling overwhelmed, and so he was giving her one-word answers, and he was taking a bit of distance, and she was really cross at how him feeling overwhelmed was making her feel. And then she was talking about how, like I said, it's an adult podcast. She sent him a picture of herself in the bath, wearing the amount of clothes that you would expect to wear in the bath. And his reply came back about a comment about the actual bath rather than a comment about her. And she was really fucked off with it. And I couldn't believe, I think it's just an example of how our minds work differently. I couldn't believe that she was, A, pissed off with him for telling her that he felt overwhelmed. And I'm not running her down. She's a dear friend of mine. But I just couldn't believe the differences in approach. That she was pissed off at him for being overwhelmed and telling her that he felt overwhelmed. And then when she went fishing for compliments, he wasn't playing that game. He wasn't there for that. He wasn't in that headspace. He was in the headspace of just trying to be polite without saying, and it's probably the same old thing, isn't it, about trying to shield other people from the burden. So he'd take himself away, give one-word answers, not really engage with the flirting, and just protect her from actually what he perceives as that darkness of the overwhelm and talking it all the way through with her. And as I'm saying that, I'm wondering, maybe she was right. Maybe he needed to talk to her more. But actually, what the reason I wanted to give that example was just the differences in the two approaches there. And one more thing, I'm just going to read out, and then I'll shut up again. My favourite quote from a guy called Grayson Perry. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him. To look from outside, he's an artist. He's an incredible artist, but he's the kind of guy you need to understand to really appreciate what he does. But his book, The Descent of Man, finishes with a charter for men's rights, and he makes the point that men do not need more responsibility, more power, more authority. It's not those rights that we need. The rights that we need are the right to be vulnerable, like I'm getting goosebumps now just looking at it. The right to be vulnerable, the right to be weak, wrong, intuitive, the right not to know, the right to be uncertain, to be flexible, and the right not to be ashamed of any of these. I think those are the rights that we need. We don't need more privilege. We need the right to fuck up and be stupid. And I just, that really hits for me. Anyway.
That's that all of those things are very subtle underlying things, aren't they? That although they're so underlying and subtle, they are absolutely major. They're major things that having those rights and that sort of freedom to be able to, live by those rights is a hugely powerful thing. Hugely powerful. And going back to what you were saying about conversation you were having with your two female friends on the call, I sometimes wonder that, and again, I apologise in advance because I do not want this to come across as like a men versus women thing whatsoever. But men that are in a relationship with a female partner, I think sometimes female partners could do with, we tend to interact with people in a way that we tend to like to be interacted with, don't we? We tend to, I would engage with someone in the way that I would expect to be engaged with. And let's say if a female was trying to listen to her male partners just opening up about something, I think it's important that female doesn't engage in that way in that conversation in the same way as she might do with another female or with her other female friends, because and the same the other way around. Men that are in a relationship with a female partner, they need to engage with them differently compared to a way that they might with, one of the lads when they're out and about or whatever. The danger being, if if that female partner, your wife, your partner, whatever, if they're expecting you to just communicate freely about emotions, in the same way as their friend might, their female friend might, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And to appreciate that male wants to be listened to, they want to be heard, and they want to be given the space to be able to just slowly open up about it. And they are, for every word that's coming out of that man's mouth, they are watching. That it could be a female friend or a female partner. They are watching so cautiously. They are watching every single flicker of an eyelash to see what the reaction is. And the minute that reaction comes back as slightly hostile or slightly dismissive or slightly disapproving, that's it. Like I mentioned earlier, it's clowned up. So yeah, it's interesting that you gave an example about how she might have had that kind of reaction to him, just taking the steps to open up.
The reason it pangs so much for me is because that's exactly how it went in my previous relationship. Somebody really not hearing what I was trying to say, and then by them not hearing it, made me less likely to say anything like that again in the future, and to just hide it and shield it and carry on. Typical man way of dealing with things.
Yeah, I think it's really important to say. First of all, Nibbo, I'm gonna publicly apologise, because when you sent me that picture of you in the bath the other day, I commented on the standard of silicone around the bath, when actually what I should have said was I thought your legs look silky smooth.
Thank you.
That rubber duck. Oh, something else about that rubber duck.
Suggestively placed.
Can I have a picture of that, please? Because I always appreciate a good bit of silicone. Oh God, that did come out bad. That did come out bad.
It's really important though, Jase, what you've said, because it's not all on men, and this is part of the process. And although the podcast we're aiming at men, we want men to kind of talk. We know full well that women are listening, and that's okay. And actually, women can take just as much away from this podcast as men can. But I think to really point out that actually it's everyone's responsibility, and I think the way you articulated it was really good, is for people to recognise, whether that's a female or a male, it's a partner or it's a friend, just to recognise, are they trying to are they opening up about something here? And is there more to it? And also that kind of going back to the idea of listening to understand as opposed to listening to reply. And I think you're right. It takes an awful lot of courage for men to open up and talk about things because of, first of all, the stigma about men talking about their feelings, but second of all, the judgment that might come from their partner. And we've already touched on the whole idea of men trying to shield everybody from the burden, and therefore to open up about the burden, it is totally counterproductive. So I think it goes both ways. There will be mums and sisters and wives, girlfriends all listening to this. It's useful because it's about recognizing some of those little small steps that the man in their life, whether it be a father, a son, a husband, a boyfriend, to recognize those small steps that they are taking, and to not be dismissive, and to certainly not kind of throw any of those things back. Really, really amazing points. So I think we've covered an awful lot of ground there, and I'm conscious of time, but I think we've got some really great things just out of that whole conversation. So let's move on to the next Would You Rather, if that's all right with everybody. So we're gonna bring it upbeat now. Okay, we're gonna talk about our positive emotions on this one. So Jase, would you rather feel joy or pride?
What, Brad? What's happened to the episode? Where's the rest of the Would You Rathers? Where's Jase gone?
Yeah, sorry about that. The trouble is, Matt, the episode was absolutely packed with amazing experiences, advice. It's just too much to fit in one episode.
So when do I get to hear Jase's answers? Where's the rest?
Well, if you want to find out where he goes with that next Would You Rather, you're going to have to tune in next Sunday for part 2.
Do you know what? I'm really looking forward to that. And just to let the listeners in on a little secret, I've actually heard the rest of the episode. I'm not listening to it live with the listeners. I was part of the recording. And I have to say, the stuff that Jase says in part 2 of this 2-part episode is the stuff that he says around how to create psychological safety for a man, but in a relationship. I think is earth-shattering, and I think everybody out there who's in a relationship with a man, or anyone that knows a man, a son of a man, a brother of a man, whoever, they need to hear what he's got to say. It's brilliant stuff. So next Sunday, you said?
Next Sunday. Going to have to tune in then. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
It'll be worth the wait.